Time now to talk politics. I'm joined by KATV's Elicia Dover and Michael Tilley with Talk Business and Politics. Thank you both for being here.
Yeah.
Got a little bit to talk about. Let's begin with what's been happening with President-elect Donald Trump. He is referring to us and our colleagues nationally as the crooked media. So I guess my question to you...
I was wondering how long it would take for him to find out we were crooked.
Elicia, I'm going to come to you first on this. What's your take on how the press should or can work with Donald Trump in this new presidency that's on the horizon?
Well, he's not really started off on the right foot by going out to public places without his press pull. It's incredibly important. Especially if you look back in history, the press pull follows around the president, not just for, stupid things or to see what he's eating. It's very important that the press pull be out with him at any time. That's when assassination attempts happen. Obviously, it has happened in history, right. And the press pull has been there to report on it. Illnesses, it's arguably the most important job in the country, if not the world. And so, the press needs to be there every single day to monitor what the president's doing.
What do you guys make of the fact that this bombastic relationship with the press, though? They write bad things about him, he takes after them on social media, but this is kind of an important role, is to hold the elected officials accountable.
Well, I've been amazed at the thin skin. We saw it through the campaign, and you would think that would diminish somewhat, but he has to know, if he's any student of history, or if he has any student of history on his staff, would have to know that there has always been this love-hate relationship between the president and the media, and you have to take the good with the bad, and he just wants it the way he wants it, and that's not going to work. My concern, though, is that the media will kowtow. The national media will kowtow because they will want that access. They'll want to engender a place in that press pool, and they'll give in. And I'm concerned that it'll diminish the quality, how deep the news will go.
Elicia, you've worked at ABC News before. Do you think that'll happen? Do you think that the press has that mentality? We've got to maintain some sort of access. We will maybe give an inch.
I think that has to happen. They've already been summoned to Trump Tower. If you saw all of those journalists, heading up the elevator to talk to him, which I heard, from inside that room was not a very good meeting. Not really starting off on the right foot with them. But yes, the relationship has got to be there. It's so important. Yeah. And we saw even on the campaign trail, his mentality with the press and turning the crowd against the press, calling out specific reporters, just unprecedented things we've never seen before.
But are you concerned that they will reduce the quality of what they report to state so they don't receive the late night tweets or receive abuse from the president? Look, he's already said you can't follow me on the press pool, but you have to come to my tower. He's already making it a one-way street. So does that get any better?
You would certainly hope that they wouldn't, but it happens, I'm sure, in every administration that there are stories that are possibly, catered to the president.
I think some of the bigger media outlets will have some that will play with the president and others that won't play with the president, and they'll actually probably be able to navigate that, whether I don't think that's necessarily good, but I think that's how it may play out. Where there will be some press favorites among the president-elect. But at the same time, like we've seen with the New York Times this past week, there's just been this, as a matter of the day that he was meeting with the New York Times, there was a front page story on the New York Times documenting the next subject I wanted to get into very quickly before the commercial break, Mike, on that is the president-elect's business interest and the potential conflicts that exist there. How troublesome is this?
Well, I think it's deeply troublesome, and I think it's even more troublesome what we heard just recently where Donald Trump said, well, I'm the president, so the law, these things don't apply to me. And what is concerning is that to some extent, the Title 18 provision that he's talking about does exempt a president, a vice president, and federal judges from that type of thing. But here's the thing, which Trump are we to believe? Or do we believe the Trump during the campaign who said he was going to change Washington, he was going to get rid of corrupt government, rid of crooked Hillary, and be open and be transparent? Is this the same Trump who said just a few days ago that he and his family would try to follow the letter of the law? Or is this the Trump that's now saying, hey, I'm kind of above the law?
What do you think, Elicia? I think these ethical conflicts of interest may be what trip him up.
Well, and I do think it's fair to mention, too, that his family, from the very beginning, has stepped forward and said they will be taking over the business. His children will be stepping in to fulfill that role. Now, whether or not that removes any conflicts of interest, probably not the case.
Yeah,
it does not remove.
All right, we got to take a quick commercial break here. We're going to come back and talk some state politics, although we could talk about this for about another hour or two, but I appreciate it. All right, we're back with more right after this. we are back talking politics with Elicia Dover of KATV, Talk Business and Politics Executive Editor Michael Tilley. All right, let's turn our attention to state politics. A lot about to happen under the dome come January. We have got a lot of topics that are going to be on this legislative agenda. We've got medical marijuana, we've got tax cuts, we've got foster care, DHS reform, we've got prison and sentencing reform. We have got ethics reform. We've also got the Arkansas Works, the private option. I will throw this out here, and Elicia, you may go first. Which topic would you like to say, here's what I want to talk about?
Well, there's so many, but I think medical marijuana is something that they're going to have to handle right away, right off the bat. There's a couple things that they're already talking about, which is launching the delay of some of that part of that program, giving state agencies more time, the application deadline for those dispensaries, increasing that deadline. They're also now talking about a tax on medical marijuana. Senator Bart Hester says that's something he's going to propose. Governor Hutchinson kind of stumped him in a press conference this week. He didn't really have an answer for whether he supports that or not. So it'll be interesting to see that play out.
Well, I find it interesting that the same people who adamantly opposed medical marijuana are now responsible for its proper implementation. This bears watching, and I hope folks like Elicia hold them to it, because frankly, I don't trust them.
All right, I rattled off all of those different topics there. What do you think is going to be one of the bigger ones you're going to keep your eye on?
I think tax cuts. We're going to be watching tax cuts. Budget is such a big part of the process. Governor Hutchinson has talked about a $50 million cut. Others have talked about as much as a $106 million cut. This comes on the heels of just 2 years ago, or in 2015, a $100 million cut by Governor Hutchinson. The problem is we have prisons to pay for. We have education fundings, K through 12 and higher education. We have a foster care system in crisis. That's what government officials said. How do we have the tax cuts and pay for government? I know that at the end of the last fiscal year, we ended up with $177 million on the books in terms of a surplus, and that's what caused these.
But we've seen tax collections behind expectations so far into this fiscal year.
You beat me to it. Those trends are moving down. So, so you have a lot of these factors, the perfect political storm, so to speak, on how they're gonna handle this.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and the governor said this week too, he understands you can't fund everything you want to in government, and you also can't usher in every tax cut that's being proposed either.
Yeah, there are some legislators that are talking about no tax cuts. They're just not willing to say it publicly at this time, but the conversation does exist up at the Capitol. I'm going to be watching all of those, obviously, but I'm going to be watching Arkansas Works and this whole Medicaid reform proposal. Because of the president-elect and a Republican Congress, we could see some major changes on healthcare policy.
By changes, you mean chaos.
Yes, and I have talked to some folks in the insurance industry, particularly here in Arkansas, who have said, we don't know what to expect, and that is very hard for business to plan for.
Yeah.
Chaos.
Well, and as if Arkansas Works wasn't enough for one governor to deal with, they're now ushering in medical marijuana, so I can't imagine more of a chaotic situation to head into January.
Yeah, and the governor now does have a super majority, though, in the Arkansas House of Representatives, with David Hillman switching parties from Democrat to Republican. Now they've got 75, so we'll see what kind of party discipline they have there. All right, Michael Tilley and Elicia Dover, as always, good to visit with you both. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
All right. That is all for today's Talk Business and Politics. We appreciate you tuning in, as always. We will see you here next time. I'm Roby Brock. Until next time, take care.